Welcome back to the Boot Room, and today we're going through Chelsea's Team of the Decade. Some really interesting sort of perspectives here. I think the start of the 2010s, Chelsea were in contention for winning a lot of domestic sort of titles, Premier Leagues, and they did obviously win a couple. And then there were moments where they dropped off. They sort of came 10th mid-table. Managers won a Premier League and then got sacked, like Conte, Mourinho. Sarri comes in and wins the Europa League and gets sacked, and obviously moves to Juve as well. So there's a bit of turbulence, but then also a lot of success for Chelsea as well, and of course the Champions League title being one of them. Arguably they were a little bit less successful in the Premier League era and more sort of in European fronts. You know, two Europa Leagues, a Champions League win, and multiple sort of domestic trophies. Didn't quite dominate the Premier League maybe as much as the Mourinho years and the Ancelotti years. Potentially that's an argument you could make, but this side because of that sort of turbulence and sort of differential values in the club and what they achieved this decade, lots of up and downs, lots of turbulence, some would say. The team's very interesting. So let's start in goal. A lot of people would say to me that Peter Cech deserves to be in. He is obviously the bigger legend at the club, and he's gone back to Chelsea in a sort of director of football capacity. His move to Arsenal obviously broke up those years. He didn't spend a long amount of time this decade at Chelsea, only 3 or 4 years before going to obviously North London. But for me, Courtois, he played more games, 156 times this decade than Cech. Was superb. Some of the saves he made were unbelievable. Looks a bit clunky now. Now he's obviously at Real Madrid, not performing excellently. I think that's fair to say. And his form's definitely dropped. I think that's fair to say. And keepers can often have an off season, a couple of off months, and suddenly they're not regarded as highly as they used to be. And Courtois has definitely dropped off his form. There's no question about that. Ask a Real Madrid fan, but his time at Chelsea was sublime. He was literally a wall. And he's about 6'9" or something. He's absolutely massive. So when he was playing in those Mourinho sides, he was an absolute fortress. And he obviously forced that move to Real Madrid, and it's not quite worked out. But don't get it wrong, under Conte and Mourinho, we're going to play a 3-4-3 kind of formation. I think it's in ode to what Conte did. Obviously, Mourinho played the likes of sort of 4-5-1, a 4-2-3-1, however you look at it, and sort of grounded out wins based on that, and sometimes he even played 4-4-2. But you've got to say that when Conte brought in 3-4-3, suddenly everyone played 3-4-3 or 3-5-2, however you look at it. And the likes of sort of Costa, Willian, Hazard all playing together with a midfield of like sort of Kante, Fabregas. That 3-4-3 worked so well. And you know, if everyone else copies you, that it's doing really well. So we're going to play 3-4-3, sort of right centre-back position. It has to be Branislav Ivanovic. Nearly butchered that name there. But he is, in his prime, he was so physical, so powerful, so direct. He contributed 65 direct goal contributions in this decade for Chelsea, which is incredible in terms of assists and goals. And you look at it, you couldn't really get at him either. It's not as if he exposed himself going forward. He was fit enough and strong enough to always be back in the right position. He could play centre-back, right-back. He bullied players at times, and he was just, on his day, he was actually world-class. And I think the issue is for him in terms of his legacy at Chelsea and other fans trying to remember him is that his form dropped off very quickly before he went back to Russia, I believe. But his peak years this decade for Chelsea were unbelievable. So he goes in at right centre-back. In the middle of the centre-backs, it has to be John Terry. I absolutely love it when a sort of living legend football player has one more season in their sort of mid-30s. And a bit like Ryan Giggs, how he won sort of Player of the Year award in his mid-30s. Like Rio Ferdinand was part of that Man United side, the last Man United side to win the Premier League in his mid-30s. And John Terry did the same in 2014-15. In this decade, he became the highest scoring Premier League defender of all time. And he was unplayable at points. You couldn't get past him. And he was so smart. And he'd use his lack of legs. Obviously, you sort of lose speed as you get older. He'd use it to his advantage. To be fair to him, Mourinho protected him well. The likes of Gary Cahill, David Luiz had a bit more energy about them. Ashley Cole was there at the start of the sort of decade as well. And just a bit more energy around the place, absolutely, and protected John Terry's legs. He wasn't the same player he was in sort of 2004, 2005, absolutely not. But his defensive ability, his actually playing from the back was brilliant. And there's no question that Mourinho wouldn't have won his third Premier League title with Chelsea in his second stint at the club without John Terry. having a sort of coming of age final hurrah sort of season. Obviously, the next season he gets dropped acrimoniously, he gets subbed off against Man City, and that was a sort of his end of grace. But he goes to Aston Villa and he plays really well in the Championship for Aston Villa. So it shows you how quality he was. There's no question he was world class. In his age category, he must have been world class. There can't be many players operating. He was about 35, 36, operating at a world class level for Chelsea defensively, and it was unbelievable to see. Obviously, the Champions League heroics in terms of wearing the kit in 2012. Didn't play in the final, of course, because of that red card against Barcelona, but if you win the Champions League and you're involved in most of the games leading up to it, obviously you are a contributing factor to that as well. So there's no question John Terry goes into the middle of the defence. At left centre-back, there's no question it's Cesar Azpilicueta. This guy's so versatile. He could actually play centre-back, he could play right centre-back, right full-back, left-back, whatever you want from him, really. And in his prime, when he moved from France to Chelsea, wow, he was unplayable. He was so quick, so powerful. I think it might be down to his low-key kind of character that he's not regarded as more of a legend. I think you look at someone like Gary Neville, how he's regarded it, or Lauren at Arsenal, how those fullbacks are regarded as, you know, some of the best the league's ever seen. And Azpilicueta's never really discussed. Maybe it's because he's still playing and there's not been time to reflect on his career at Chelsea, but he's been absolutely sublime as a leader. You can still see him in this Frank Lampard side as being one of the mature guys. Obviously, the most appearances for the club so far, you know, currently serving at the club. And you think someone like Reece James at right back is looking at Azpilicueta and thinking, I want to replicate any kind of career that this guy had. You know, Azpilicueta was part of the sides, the Conte side in particular. I thought he was exceptional that season. And when you play 3-4-3, you know, Conte was obviously exposing the likes of Gary Cahill, David Luiz at points, and Azpilicueta was maybe the best defender in the league that season, and he was covering exceptionally well, and also going forward he was also a threat as well. So yeah, no question, Azpilicueta at left centre back. In defensive midfield, there's no question it has to be N'Golo Kante. When you go to Leicester and you do what you did at Leicester, with a you know, arguably a way worse midfield partner next to you in Danny Drinkwater. Obviously he went to Chelsea as well and that didn't quite work out. When you do what you do at Leicester and then you go to another club and you basically replicate the exact same form with no drop off, no change, he goes around things in a humble fashion. In the challenge, he's incredibly powerful. In the tackle, I've been lucky enough to see him sort of play live, and he's so powerful, so quick, yet he's so small. He doesn't stop running. He's what football's about, really. He epitomises the sort of the work ethic, the energy that you want in a footballer, without the flashy cars. And he's just an all-round nice guy. Also a world-class defensive midfielder, maybe the best in the world on his day. Obviously, he picked up a few injuries this season, but as soon as he's fit, he goes into any side. I think Sarri played him sort of attacking midfielder at points, or right midfielder. Not quite the best thing to do, in my opinion. I think he was just best in that Conte side where he just sat deep and broke everything up, and he was exceptional for the Italian. N'Golo Kante, yeah, base of the midfield, easy selection. Next to Kante is Frank Lampard. Imagine these two playing together in their prime. Kante and Lampard would have been exceptional. Ironically, Lampard's now managing Kante at Chelsea, but Lampard obviously retired and left the club sort of in the middle part of this decade. Obviously went to Man City and scored against Chelsea, so Chelsea fans want to soon forget that. But look, if you start in the Champions League final and you win the Champions League final, not in your peak, I think Chelsea fans would throw you in regardless, to be honest with you. I mean, it's not an argument that Ryan Bertrand's going to get in this squad, but Frank Lampard played in a sort of midfield duo of him and John Obi Mikel against the likes of Bastian Schweinsteiger in midfield against Munich, and he got through the game, and Chelsea held on. And despite Bayern Munich missing a lot of opportunities, Chelsea stayed in the game because of the likes of Obi Mikel, Frank Lampard doing their work in midfield. You could see Frank Lampard, I remember watching the game, and he was absolutely shattered at points. But he contributed to the one trophy that Abramovich wanted, and Chelsea won the Champions League. So Frank Lampard has to go in there for me, and Chelsea fans can forget what happened at Man City. Ahead of him is Juan Mata. People forget how good this guy was. It's probably because he was only at Chelsea for 3 seasons before having that big flop move to Man United. You know, he scored 33 goals, got about 58 assists in 3 years, which is unbelievable if you think about it. He won Chelsea's Player of the Year 2 years in a row, got into the Team of the Year in the Premier League as well. For 3 seasons, you know, Champions League winner, Europa League winner. absolutely exceptional record in 3 seasons. And I'm not too sure why Chelsea sold him. Maybe they just didn't see his legs and his energy being part of the club, sort of moving forward under the likes of sort of Mourinho and Conte, what they wanted from midfielders. And you could kind of see that now, I think, because at Man United it hasn't quite worked out, and it didn't under Mourinho when Mourinho was at Man United as well. But on his day, free kicks, assists, crosses into the box were exceptional quality. And the guy who moved from Valencia for me was unplayable at points. And the move to Man United hasn't quite worked out. But when he was at Chelsea, he was simply sublime. On the right, it has to be Willian. As a Man City fan, I was absolutely scared of Willian every time he sort of played City. There was one game where he just marked Yaya Toure out off the pitch. I think he just said, look, I'm just going to stick on Yaya Toure and stop Yaya Toure, one of the best midfielders in the world at that time, from playing. He just man-marked him, and that was a winger cutting in. Willian was built almost like a bit like a defensive midfielder. He's very, very strong and powerful, and obviously when he gets going the other end and he actually is a sort of winger running at fullback. He's contributed over 85 goals and assists in 6 years. I think Chelsea fans would argue that he could do better. He could score more goals with his talent, the Brazilian flair he's got, the tricks, the free kicks, the skills. Maybe he just doesn't. There are moments where he switches off and his consistency is a little bit, it wanes at points. But there's no question that Willian, under Conte in particular, maybe had the best season of any Brazilian in recent memory, to be honest with you, in terms of Brazilian flair players in the Premier League. Not too many succeed, obviously Robinho being one of the flops, but Willian was brilliant, absolutely so powerful, and I think he absolutely loved the fact that he missed out on the opportunity of joining Spurs for Chelsea. Was obviously very close to moving to North London, and he went to Chelsea and won everything. So that season under Conte, I just can't forget it. Him and sort of Victor Moses on that right wing, when he moved over to the left flank at points, he was just unplayable. And yeah, Willian gets into the right wing position. And right, in a sort of free floating position in midfield, sort of on the other side of Mata, obviously Eden Hazard, the 9th highest scorer in Chelsea history. He won Chelsea Player of the Year in 2014, 15, 2017, 2019 even. Scored 85 goals in 240 appearances as well. I mean, simply on his day, unplayable. The fact that there are seasons where he said, "Look, I'm not going to switch on today. I'm just going to turn it off a little bit. I don't really fancy it." And then the next game or the next season, even he could just say, "Look, I want to be the best player in the Premier League now." He could dribble past you. He could score any type of goal. And Chelsea fans will say he's one of the best players they've ever seen at the club. Period. And since Hazard joined Chelsea, he created a goal or an assist every 99 minutes. Incredible. And his time, if you count his time since signing to leaving Chelsea, he created more opportunities than any other player in the Premier League, with 595 direct goal opportunities. Stuff like that. I mean, he'll go down as one of the best players in Premier League history, let alone Chelsea history. Obviously, the moments where he dropped off, I think you could say arguably it was down to him and his sort of mentality and the fact you can pick it up again. But there have been some great players that have had sort of not poor mentality. I don't know enough about the guy to say that, but there are moments where sort of Zola, Cantona had drop-offs a little bit, and Tevez and people like that, Berbatov. So he's an absolute all-time great in English football, let alone Chelsea football, and he sort of goes onto the left floating position. Right, this is a fancy team, so sort of on the left striker kind of tucking in position, I'm going to have to put Diego Costa. I know he wants to play down the middle. I'm sure he'll be very angry with me in this video, but with about 1 in 3 goal return in 3 seasons at Chelsea, there were literally, again, points where Diego Costa came in and was literally unplayable. He was so strong, so rugged. You didn't even want to start a fight with him. I think there are some players in the Premier League that are stronger or the same strength sort of as Costa was, if that makes sense. But without his mentality and how he looked and how how aggressive he was, that strength sort of went on to another level, and you sort of didn't want to touch him. Defenders moved off of him a little bit. He got an extra yard because of how aggressive and powerful he was, and angry as a person. He was a little bit bonkers, let's be honest. But he was, again, same with Willian. Him and Willian at points for Conte were simply sublime. Powerful striker. He could score any type of goal, and his move to back to Atletico Madrid, maybe hasn't quite worked out. Maybe not to the same peak that he had at Chelsea, but simply Diego Costa, I wouldn't want to mess around and leave him out of this list. So yeah, he goes in sort of the left striker position. And in 2012, obviously some guy called what's his name? Didier Drogba. I'm not too sure if Chelsea fans will remember. Scored a penalty against Bayern Munich to win the Champions League. Obviously, the legendary Ivorian was exceptional in that game, providing that header to obviously draw the game, bring the game back, take it to extra time, take it to penalties, and Drogba takes the winning penalty. You couldn't make it up. It was his final kick of his career at Chelsea in terms of the actual career that people want to remember. He came back to Chelsea under Mourinho from Galatasaray. He came back to Chelsea under Mourinho, and yes, he didn't start every game, but Drogba knew that he was going to come off the bench and make a difference, and he won another Premier League with Mourinho. So he won every kind of trophy at Chelsea in this decade. He was obviously past his peak. I think his peak would be fair to say under maybe Ancelotti in the sort of 2009, 2008 era. But in 2012, who cares if he was a little bit over the hill? The header against Bayern Munich was simply unbelievable. And there are moments in football history where you are defined by one piece of brilliance, and Drogba's header was incredibly powerful, and the angle that it came in at, and the fact it was against Munich in the Champions League final, simply incredible stuff. And the penalty as well against Manuel Neuer, one of the best keepers arguably of all time, to sort of tuck it under Manuel Neuer in the fashion he did. He looked a bit nervous, Drogba. I remember sort of seeing his run up, and it looked a bit shaky, but he sort of goes in confident penalty, and it obviously wins Chelsea their first Champions League trophy. Guys, thanks for watching. What did you think of my Chelsea team of the decade? I'm not too sure who the manager would be. Maybe Conte, maybe Mourinho. Let me know in the comments below. And make sure you like, comment, subscribe. More content coming soon.